Enjoy your time here and find peace in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. It was the 8th year I had been relying on the Chen family. Jasper Chen had stopped mentioning our engagement entirely. I was dragging on, becoming an old maid, while the Chen family was considering young ladies from other houses. Caught unexpectedly by me one day, Mrs. Chen suggested finding me another good marriage match. I nodded in agreement. The next time we met, Jasper had been promoted and returned to the capital. At the banquet, seeing us appearing as a loving couple, his gaze was complex. He raised his cup for a sip, which ultimately turned into a bitter smile. Seeing me nod along with the charade, Mrs. Chen breathed a sigh of relief. She held my hand, reminding me to dress warmly as the weather turned cold. After exchanging a few pleasantries, I saw her out of the courtyard gate. Mrs. Chen's eyes held a look of guilt. "You are a good child. Ultimately, the Chen family has wronged you." I shook my head with a faint smile and back to the inner courtyard. The wind rustled. Looking up, I saw pear blossoms falling like white snow. Many years ago, there was a pear tree just like this in my own courtyard. It was planted by my parents when I was born. But in a season just like this one, my father died in battle far away, followed by the destruction of our home and the loss of our family. Following my mother's dying wish, I went to rely on the Chen family. On the way, I burned with a high fever and fainted by the roadside. In my hazy consciousness, a figure dismounted and rushed toward me. When I woke up, I was already in the Chen manor. The first person I saw was Jasper's grandfather, Grandmaster Chen. It was a face weathered by wind and frost, yet unable to hide the kindness in his eyes. Grandmaster Chen gave me a new identity. I was no longer the only daughter of the Wen family from Bianzhou, but an orphan from a distant branch of the Chen clan. The Grandmaster never explained why, and I didn't ask. In the years that followed, he let me study and practice martial arts, watching me grow day by day. He said he had a grandson about my age. I thought perhaps that was the person who saved me and brought me back to the manor. In the spring of the 5th year, Jasper's father announced the engagement between Jasper and me, saying it was a match decided before we were even born. After that day, Grandmaster Chen never woke up again. At night, with swollen eyes, I kept vigil in the morning hall. That was the first time I met Jasper. He looked travel-worn and exhausted, kneeling straight before the spirit tablet, yet his shoulders trembled with grief. Under the candlelight, he wore mourning clothes, his brow and eyes filled with haggard sorrow. I quietly walked over and knelt beside him, handing him a white handkerchief. He turned to look at me, a flash of surprise in his red-rimmed eyes, then took the handkerchief and whispered his thanks. "Are you Nina Wen?" His voice was hoarse. I nodded. The night wind grew stronger, making the candle flame flicker, casting our intertwined shadows against the wall. Thinking of the past, I couldn't help but bury my head and sob. Jasper draped his cloak over me, gently patting my back. Afterward, Jasper stayed in Yunzhou, both to mourn his grandfather and to prepare for the civil service exams. As the newly appointed head of the family, he carried a heavy burden, single-handedly supporting the glory and decline of the Chen family. Meanwhile, I became a pillar of the Chen household, devotedly caring for Mrs. Chen, handling all the trivial matters, and carefully managing the family business. Until the day he collapsed drunk in the pavilion. It was the first time I saw Jasper so weak. Usually, he kept himself calm and steady, revealing no emotion. I walked over, took the wine jar, and told him, "Don't be afraid. If you're tired, sleep for a while." Only then did he let go of the jar, leaned on my shoulder, and fell into a deep sleep. In my 7th year at the Chen Manor, Jasper went to the capital. For his birthday, he sent back a white jade hairpin carved with pear blossoms. I stayed with Mrs. Chen, waiting for news of his exam results. Jasper had been exceptionally brilliant since childhood, composing poetry at 3, sitting for the child exams at 8, so the news that he became the top scholar, the Zhuangyuan, at 18 surprised no one. The entire Chen Manor was filled with joy. Everyone assumed our happy union was imminent. Unexpectedly, the emperor fell critically ill, and the decree granting official posts was delayed. It wasn't until the following spring, when Prince Ray took charge as regent, that he remembered this Zhuangyuan Jasper. He casually assigned him to a barren, impoverished place, shocking everyone. Coincidentally, the night before the decree came down, I overheard a conversation between Jasper and Mrs. Chen. He said Prince Ray was wary of him and feared he would be sent away. He had never revealed a word of this to me. Chen cried out in alarm. Jasper simply said calmly, "Staying away from factional struggles is also good." Mrs. Chen asked again, If that is true, what will become of Nina? He fell silent and did not answer. I stood outside the window, waiting for his answer. After a long while, Jasper's voice rang out again. He spoke decisively. She is, after all, the wife grandfather chose for me. I have delayed her for so many years, it would be better to find a suitable time to adopt her as a foster sister, and then find her a good marriage match. Pausing for a moment, he added, besides, her status is low, she would be of no help to me in the officialdom. Mrs. Chen hurriedly cut him off. Say no more. Jasper said nothing else. The stone in my heart finally dropped. I turned and left. I didn't want to wait any longer. I intended to bid farewell to Mrs. Chen that night and leave early the next morning. When I arrived at her courtyard, I saw a doctor standing under the corridor talking to Nanny Du, his expression complex. Seeing me, Nanny Du hurried out to greet me. Miss Nina, why are you here at this hour? Is something wrong? The weather is turning cold. I made some clothes and socks for Auntie. Is she unwell again? I asked cautiously. No, just that dinner didn't agree with her. She's asleep now. Why don't you come back tomorrow? As she spoke, Nanny Du guided me out. I had to hand the items to her and turn to leave. Early the next morning, I brewed medicinal food and brought it to the main courtyard, only to hear violent coughing coming from inside. I pushed the door open and saw Mrs. Chen, pale and weak, leaning against the table. Master and servant were both startled. Seeing they couldn't hide it from me, they agreed to let me stay and care for her. I devoted myself to nursing Mrs. Chen. During that time, she often looked as if she wanted to speak but stopped, ultimately saying nothing. Mrs. Chen secretly looked into many families for me. Though not wealthy, they were stable and honest households. I knew she wanted my future life to be peaceful and worry-free, but I tactfully refused her kindness. Time flew by, and Mrs. Chen's health improved significantly. I also gradually handed over the Chen family business to reliable people to manage. Before leaving, I held a private banquet to invite my good friend, Lily Ling. Her family had practiced medicine for generations. I met her the previous year, while traveling to the capital for business. I stumbled upon her as she was desperately fleeing an arranged marriage. Since then, she had followed me back to Yunzhou. I helped her open a medical clinic, and she frequently came to examine Mrs. Chen. Knowing I was about to leave, Lily was incredibly reluctant to part. I had intended to stop by and bid farewell to Jasper on my way, but perhaps he had already arrived at his new post. The year Jasper was sent away, I was 19, and it was the 8th year I had relied on the Chen family. The Chen family sheltered me as I grew up. I never lacked food or clothing, nor did I neglect my studies or etiquette. I never resented their decision. On the day I left Yanzhou Manor, just as the sky began to brighten, I carried my luggage to the gate. Nanny Du rushed over from behind. Miss Nina, here are travel expenses and supplies for the road. Nanny Du handed the bundle to Luna Song. Mrs. Chen also came out. Her eyes were slightly wet. She seemed to have 1,000 words of advice, but in the end, she only said one sentence. Take good care of yourself. Auntie, please take care. I bowed again. After bidding them farewell, I turned and stepped onto the carriage. Mrs. Chen stood there, just like all the times I went out for business before, watching me leave. Only this time, my return date was undefined. The carriage slowly left the city gate. Ultimately, I couldn't resist looking back. On the city wall, the words, Yunzhou Prefecture, gradually faded into a blur. For a moment, a sense of loss overwhelmed me, just like when I was small and first arrived here, lost in a strange environment. Fortunately, I had Grandmaster Chen and Mrs. Chen to teach and accompany me. I remembered their kindness and held no grudge. Lowering the carriage curtain, we headed toward the capital. Switching between water and land routes along the way, we arrived safely in the capital more than a month later. The day we entered the city, we were met with a heavy downpour. I pulled Luna out of the rain and into the largest restaurant in the capital, Blossom Tower. This place was exquisitely carved and painted, and the guests coming and going were all high-ranking officials and nobles. Seeing us travel, worn and weary, the waiter showed no disdain and led us to a seat by the window. I ordered a few signature dishes and wine, intending to ask about affairs in the capital. Suddenly, someone in the tower shouted loudly, "Murder!" The crowd instantly went into an uproar. A young nobleman dressed in black brocade stepped out from inside, followed by men escorting a man covered in blood. Hanging at the waist of that brocade-clad nobleman was a gold token. He was from the Imperial Security Bureau. As he passed the door, his gaze casually swept toward the window, happening to meet mine. Facing that cold face for a fleeting moment, Although his expression revealed arrogance, the depths of his eyes were cold and heartless, as if nothing could concern him. They left, and the tower did not fall silent. Because of it, the sound of music and the scent of tea drifted through the air again, as if everyone had long been accustomed to such scenes. After finishing our meal, Luna and I went to the south of the city and rented a small courtyard. Once settled, we spent half a day wandering the West Market and rented a storefront, preparing to do a small tea business. The shop I chose wasn't large, but it was located on the busiest street section, with a backyard and a well attached. Most people passing by here were peddlers coming from the outskirts to trade, often lingering all day. The tea and fruit juice in the shop were sold at affordable prices, so on opening day, it was packed. Several escort agency guards were attracted by the smell of my special tea. After drinking, they applauded in praise, and even bought more to take away when they left. The tea business of the small shop flourished, and the days passed quickly in business. That night, as usual, I was preparing to close the shop. When passing the backyard, I heard movement coming from the well. I immediately went on alert. Carefully approaching and opening the well cover, I saw a pair of eyes full of bloodshot veins. He signaled for me to be silent. Luna waited outside the door. "Miss, is something wrong?" "Nothing." I covered the well again. I remembered there are still a few accounts unchecked today. "You go back first, I'll stay at the courtyard tonight." Luna nodded, locked the door, and left. The person was obviously exhausted, his hand gripping the rope trembled, about to slip. I hurriedly grabbed his hand. "Hold on tight to me." He opened his eyes wide, using his last bit of strength to cooperate with me. Once I pulled him up from the well, he fainted immediately. I recognized him as the Imperial Security Bureau official who had acted with thunderous force in the restaurant the day I entered the capital. In fact, his identity was more than that. He was the grandson of the Emperor, Julian Zhao. A year ago, the grandson finally returned to the capital after years of traveling, only to be personally appointed by the Emperor as the head of the Imperial Security Bureau, keeping him in the capital. This was inherently against convention, yet no one in the court objected, allowing this famously hedonistic nobleman to control the Imperial Security Bureau, act as he pleased, and offend countless officials. I helped him into the room and lit an oil lamp to check his injuries. A broken arrow was stuck in his shoulder, blood soaking half his sleeve. I cut his clothes and used silk soaked in strong wine to clean the blood. He woke up from the pain, his cold fingers suddenly gripped my wrist tight, his gaze shifting from alert to gentle, only rasping out one sentence. "Don't reveal this." I nodded in compliance. My hands didn't stop moving. I squeezed his jaw open and stuffed a piece of cloth into his mouth. When I pulled the broken arrow out, his forehead was covered in fine sweat, veins bulging. Yet he gritted his teeth and endured without making a sound. I quickly treated the wound and stopped the bleeding. Once he was settled, I pulled up a chair to watch over him by the bed. "Sleep, this place is safe." With those words, his eyes gradually dimmed. The next morning, as dawn just broke, he was gone, leaving only a jade token carved with the word, Julian. I put the jade token away safely and opened the door to continue business as usual. Business at my small shop was very good and the profits were decent. In a flash, we had been in the capital for half a year. My shop in the West Market had gained some reputation, so I prepared to expand, not just selling tea and dim sum, but targeting both commoners and scholars as my customers. Therefore, I poured all my savings from over the years into buying a long-abandoned garden, naming it Ningen House. Compared to Blossom Tower, which specialized in serving literati and high-ranking nobles, the business scope of Ningen House was slightly broader. The garden was divided into 4 sections. Besides keeping the old tea area for guests to rest and enjoy tea, I invited a gardener to renovate the flower garden for elegance. Next to the flower garden was a library pavilion, housing rare books, ancient manuscripts, and exquisite paintings I had collected over many years. Finally, the 3-story building deepest in the garden was renovated into lodgings specifically for scholars from various prefectures coming to the capital for exams but with tight budgets. The prices here were set very affordably. If they were truly destitute, they could even offer poetry or paintings to deduct the cost. Every exam season, scholars from all over flocked to the capital in countless numbers, many of whom came from humble backgrounds. Although they had passed many exams to reach the metropolitan exam, they were often plagued by financial worries. Ningen House could solve their concerns about food and lodging. To prevent troublemakers before the exams, guards also needed to be arranged. This project would surely operate at a loss initially, but in the long run, the benefits gained would be far greater. Determined, Luna and I began preparing to renovate the old garden and construct Ning'an House. My first Lunar New Year in the capital passed hurriedly amidst the chaos of work. Ning'an House finally opened just in time before scholars from the prefectures flooded the capital for the exams. Green bricks and jade tiles, a cassia tree was planted before the door. I personally established the rule any scholar coming to the capital for exams could use poetry or painting to pay. Many scholars stood before the door with their luggage, hesitation in their eyes, afraid to step in. A scholar in a blue robe pushed through the crowd, looked up at Ning'an House sign, and stepped decisively inside. I smiled and stepped forward, speaking gently. Ning'an House is open specifically for scholars of humble means. Books, brushes, and ink are all prepared in the rooms. Hearing this, he nodded gently. Following me across the threshold, he wielded the brush and splashed ink, offering a poem to cover the fee. Beneath the painting he signed, Autumn of the 20th year of Yongan, Luke Liu. Those familiar with the scholars immediately recognized this exceptionally talented nobleman as the provincial graduate from Dingzhou. The Liu family was originally a renowned scholarly family in the capital, but because they frankly admonished the late emperor and violated a taboo, they were demoted to a petty official position in Dingzhou. 30 years later, a descendant of the Liu family stepped foot in this bustling place once again. I had someone hang his work on the wall, then sent someone to show him to his room. Seeing this, other scholars approached to inquire. Before long, the entrance of Ning'an House was gathered full of literati, mostly discussing and critiquing the scholars' poetry and paintings. Among them, Luke's work was revered as a masterpiece. More than a month later, as the metropolitan exam approached, the scholars no longer went out often, mostly staying in their rooms to review. One day, a guest drinking tea in the tower suddenly fell to the ground, convulsing for no reason. Everyone panicked. The literati who had gathered to discuss famous paintings immediately scattered. Before I could speak, 3 to 5 men impatiently pinned the blame on me. The food and drink here are poisonous. Arrest the culprit and take her to the authorities. That man rushed forward without a word, intending to grab me, but I turned sideways to dodge. Seeing me resist, the men turned shame into anger and tried to hit me. In the urgency of the moment, Luna threw a bowl hard at them. The leader stumbled back in pain, turning his head to incite the crowd. Your food killed someone, and you still dare to hit people. In the corner, someone slammed the table and stood up. Nonsense. Why are we fine after eating? It was the escort agency leader who frequently visited my tea shop. Luna shouted, Shut up. You dare fabricate trouble without proof. I should be the one taking you to the officials. I calmly scanned the room. The urgent matter was to call a doctor. Regardless of why this guest fell, saving him came first. The waiter snapped out of it and immediately ran to fetch a doctor. The hall fell into a dead silence. Everyone's eyes darted between the person on the floor and me. Before long, a doctor carrying a medicine chest rushed in. After checking the pulse carefully, he declared with a grim expression, This is poisoning. The room instantly buzzed with noise. Emboldened, the troublemaker raised his voice. Everyone heard that clearly. It really is deadly poison. Before he finished, a squad of constables appeared at the door. Why is there a gathering and noise here? Officer, you came just in time. The owner of Ning'an House poisoned someone. My brother is lying right there. So that's it. The head constable sneered. Men. Arrest the suspect and take her to the Yamen for interrogation. He didn't hesitate to order my arrest. I pulled out the token carved with Julian. I'd like to see who dares. Recognizing the token, the constable immediately knelt to ask for forgiveness. My expression remained unchanged as I turned to the doctor. Do you know what kind of poison it is? Please save him first, doctor. The doctor and the troublemaker suddenly fell silent, looking at each other without speaking. If this doctor cannot diagnose the poison, why not invite another to look? At the door, Luke arrived, leading Dr. Ann, the most reputable physician on the next street. By now, a crowd had completely surrounded Ning'an House. After Dr. Ann checked the pulse, he confirmed, It is indeed poisoning. He exchanged a look with me. However, this type of poison must be ingested 2 hours before it takes effect. 2 hours ago, Ning'an House hadn't even opened. The surrounding crowd whispered, Isn't this a frame-up? The man stammered anxiously, You dare to lie. What exactly is this poison? Luna immediately pressed. Dr. Ann said. As the words fell, everyone's eyes went wide, as if suddenly enlightened. Seeing the situation turn, the man on the ground couldn't hold back anymore, and peeked open his eyes to gauge the situation. If I had been forcibly dragged to the magistrate just now, Ningyan House would have been closed for investigation. Even if the truth came out later, it would inevitably implicate the hard-working scholars trusting in Ningyan House. Some might even fail the exam because of it, and Ningyan House would die in its infancy. Now everyone had reacted, the troublemaker had no way to deny it. Seeing the plot exposed, he sneaked to the door, intending to escape in the chaos. Stop them. Several waiters with martial arts skills and the escort agency leader heard the shout and rushed after them. The crowd at the door suddenly parted. Before the troublemaker could step outside, someone kicked him back in. Julian still had that nonchalant appearance. He crossed his arms and leaned against the doorframe, his gaze falling straight on me. Who reported to the officials? Today he wore plain clothes. Although he no longer had the terrifying, murderous aura of usual days, the unrestrained wildness radiating his bones was hard to hide. When he looked toward me, the corners of his lips quivered slightly. He tilted his head, his attendants immediately understood and quickly escorted the captured man to the magistrate. The constables who had tried to arrest me without distinguishing black from white also slunk away behind them. Seeing the matter was over, the onlookers gradually dispersed, but the buzzing discussion lingered for a long time. I stepped forward a few paces and curtsied to him. "Thank you, my lord." His eyes observed Ningyan House with interest, finally stopping on the wall covered in poetry and paintings. The owner has a kind heart. Ningyan House should not be harmed by others. I stood quietly to the side. I just want to provide a little convenience for poor scholars. I cannot bear to see bright pearls buried in dust. He shifted his gaze out the window to the busy street filled with people. Acts of benevolence in this world are always easily obscured by fog. I hope that after this storm, this place can truly be peaceful. I am returning the jade token to you, my lord. I respectfully offered the token up. Julian glanced at it very perfunctorily and turned to leave. "Keep it." I bowed and replied yes. That night, the authorities sent someone to report that the troublemaker had confessed. Indeed, he was instigated by someone else, with the aim of ruining Ningyan House's reputation and cutting off our business. Luna secretly asked me, "Miss, what kind of person is that young nobleman?" "Exactly." I looked at the lamp on the table and whispered, "He is a noble person and moreover, a noble person with the same goal as me." A few days later, the scholars had to go to the examination hall. I had bedding, warm mats, brushes, and ink prepared in advance. I also stayed up all night with Luna making scallion pancakes to put in each of their food boxes. Before they set off, I instructed them, "Just set your minds at ease and take the exam." The students were filled with gratitude, bowing one after another to express their thanks. 3 days later, the metropolitan exam that the capital had been waiting for finally ended. Some looked triumphant as the spring breeze, others looked downcast. I was busy with business in the shop. It wasn't until the candlelight flickered and the guests in the tea house gradually thinned out that I tidied up the books, occasionally hearing laughter from afar. Outside the door, moonlight spilled onto the bluestone road. Luke walked in and helped me clean up. "Miss Nina, let me help." "Thank you." Luke's movements when arranging the books were gentle and careful. When he flipped to a volume of commentary on policy essays, his finger suddenly stopped at a page. He pointed to a marginal note, his eyes flashing with surprise and joy. "Miss Nina's perspective is truly unique, and it coincides with what I often think about." I smiled softly and replied modestly, "Mr. Luke flatters me." It was just a moment of inspiration, and I casually wrote down some thoughts. I looked up, and happened to meet his smiling eyes. I smiled, lowered my head, and changed the subject. "Where did you go today, Mr. Luke? Did you encounter anything interesting?" While sitting idly in the front hall, thoughts of Ningyan House came to mind. "So I drew this peaceful residence painting to give to you, Miss Nina." Luke took a painting entitled, "Peaceful Residence," from his sleeve and slowly unrolled it. In the painting, Ningyan House was quiet and harmonious, with its green bricks and jade tiles arranged in a balanced composition. Although the figures were just sketched with a few strokes, each had a distinct demeanor. Some sat leisurely in the pavilion drinking tea and playing chess, while others strolled unhurriedly along the paths chatting. The entire painting exuded a sense of peaceful years and tranquility. "Mr. Luke has a delicate mind. This painting truly makes one yearn for such a life." I remarked softly. "Have you had lunch yet, sir?" "I just dined at my uncle's estate," Luke replied. "He wants me to stay at his manor." "If that is the case, I will have someone pack your luggage for you, sir, and tomorrow we will escort you to the manor." "I haven't accepted yet." He interrupted gently. It's just that during this trip to my uncle's estate, I unexpectedly heard some news. Luke considered for a moment, then said, the trouble caused at Ningen House that day was the work of Blossom Tower, and the person behind Blossom Tower is a high-ranking minister in the court. They fear too many scholars from humble backgrounds entering the officialdom, breaking the current situation where noble families monopolize the court. Suddenly, the candle wick popped with a small explosion. The drum signaling the curfew sounded. Pedestrians in the alleys hurried their steps toward home. Thank you, Mr. Luke, for informing me. But it is late now. You should return to your room and rest early. The scroll was placed back in its original spot. I bowed to express my gratitude to Luke. He nodded in response, then bid farewell and left. On the 8th day of the second month, the golden list was posted. Ningen House had 3 successful candidates, among whom Luke took first place in the metropolitan exam. The news spread throughout the capital, and Ningen House's reputation resounded. We held a celebratory banquet. The entrance was packed with guests coming to offer congratulations. Even Blossom Tower, the #1 restaurant in the capital, sent people with congratulatory gifts. Suddenly, the sound of horse hooves rang out from the street corner. The crowd parted like a receding tide as a gilded carriage slowly approached and stopped in front of Ningen House. Julian stepped down from the carriage, dressed in crimson robes, ostentatious to the extreme. Congratulations, shopkeeper Nina. I curtsied to return the greeting. Julian waved his hand, ordering his men to carry up a chest of gold. The scene instantly became even more tumultuous. The people from Blossom Tower were the first to step forward, bowing respectfully. Greetings, Your Highness. Everyone snapped out of their daze and knelt in unison. Only then did they realize this arrogant youth was the imperial grandson. Julian smiled faintly and raised his hand. He personally helped me up, his gaze glancing at Luke standing beside me, seemingly a bit displeased. Seeing this, everyone bowed their heads even lower. Ningen House had 3 consecutive successful candidates, and was now rewarded with 1,000 tals of gold by the imperial grandson. For a moment, its prominence was unmatched. That day, rumors sprang up from all directions, claiming that the imperial grandson spent money like water for a beauty's smile. The capital sighed that the imperial grandson was foolish to have eyes for a lowly merchant woman. Some also defended me, saying I was merely targeted by a hedonistic nobleman. When Luna told me the news she had gathered, I was in the backyard whisking tea. Miss, the rumors outside are truly awful to hear. They say you used your beauty to serve others and had long been in cahoots with the imperial grandson. Luna's face turned bright red, her fists clenched tight. They even said our Ningen House only opened thanks to the imperial grandson. I blew away the foam floating in the tea bowl, poured a cup, and handed it to Luna. It doesn't matter. Let them talk. Luna angrily drank the cup of tea in one gulp. The emperor personally set the 21st of the 4th month as the date for the palace exam. The scholars remained in the capital, burying their heads in classics to prepare their policy essays. At the same time, the court sent officials from the Ministry of Rights to instruct the scholars on court etiquette to avoid any faux pas before the throne. A month passed in a flash. On the day of the palace exam, the scholars entered the palace at dawn and didn't hand in their papers and leave until dusk. On the 24th of the 4th month, during the Golden Hall roll call, the list was posted at the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Luke lived up to everyone's expectations, passing 3 exams in a row with top honors, and was appointed by Imperial Grace as a junior 6th-rank compiler in the Hanlin Academy. At the same time, Ningen House rose to fame along with First Luke. Even the high-ranking officials and nobles who frequented Blossom Tower flocked here. For a time, the entrance of Ningen House was as busy as a marketplace. Luna served by my side. Miss, have you been so busy you forgot? Half a month from now is your 21st birthday. My hand flicking the abacus paused slightly. How did time pass so quickly? I am actually 21 already. After thinking for a while, I opened my mouth and said, indeed, we should prepare thoroughly. Luna looked expectant. Should we hold a grand banquet at Ningen House and decorate properly? I shook my head slightly. No, on that day, I want to throw an embroidered ball to choose a husband. Hearing this, Luna's eyes lit up. Yes, I will immediately spread the news. That night, Luke hurriedly came to Ningen House. When no one was around, he handed me a brocade box. His gaze was firm and bright. Miss Nina, I am 23 this year with a clean family background, no concubines or mistresses. I wish to ask for your hand as my wife. I looked down at the brocade box, silent for a moment. Lucy Liu, the twin sister of Luke. Lucy suddenly looked up, gazing at me with alertness. I know your intention in proposing, I continued calmly. Exposing your sharp talent made the Lu name resound, but it also attracted many jealous and greedy people. You want to marry me to extricate yourself, and I would be the best shield for you in the future. Miss Nina. Having her thoughts guessed by me, Lucy looked ashamed. You and I are both women. You simply want to step into the court like them, and you have never done anything against nature or reason. I can help you. It was just the 6th day of the 5th month. A brocade tower, 30 feet high, was erected in front of Ning An House. The streets were packed with commoners coming to watch the excitement. I put on red makeup and stood quietly on the embroidered tower. Miss, it is time. Luna whispered in my ear. The sound of horse hooves gradually approached from the street, and a scarlet official robe appeared accordingly. I raised the embroidered ball high and threw it. In the moment the horse galloped past, Julian leaped up, reaching out to firmly catch the embroidered ball in his arms. He turned and dismounted, striding quickly to the front of Ning An House, holding the embroidered ball high in his hand. His burning gaze looked straight at me. That look was full of cherishing, as if he had found a treasure. In the distance, Lucy in her green official robe looked toward me. Our eyes met for a moment. She bowed with clasped hands, then turned and left. I also followed the flow and withdrew my gaze. Julian immediately took me into the palace to beg his imperial grandfather to grant our marriage. Walking deep into the palace walls, with countless palace servants bowing along the way, Julian's expression was firm, holding my hand tightly without letting go. I looked at his profile, remembering the day he came to Ning An House to find me and took me to the east suburbs. The west suburbs were picturesque with mountains and water, but the east suburbs were full of broken walls and shattered tiles. Few people passed by. Beggars huddled together in open-air makeshift shacks. Compared to the bustling prosperity in the center of the capital, it was like a different world, yet it still bore the name of the imperial city. That day, I saw a little beggar boy, about 8 or 9 years old, kneeling on the ground begging for something. I stopped to observe. He seemed to sense it. His eyes darted to me. The moment he turned his head to face me, I saw a flash of light in his eyes. He crawled over to me, intending to grab the hem of my dress, but he held out a pair of dry, black hands. Perhaps fearing I would be disgusted, he ultimately just buried a hands under his head and kowtowed to me. Sister, please save my little sister. He pointed to the makeshift shack. There lay a small body wrapped tightly, while the older brother before my eyes wore only a tattered rag. Please save Bauer. I am willing to do anything, even if you want my life. I took off the fur coat I was wearing and covered him with it, then turned and walked toward the child named Bauer. Seeing his younger sibling saved, he seemed to completely run out of strength and fainted. Julian and I took them to a medical clinic. When I was leaving, the boy just woke up and called out weakly after me, "Sister." I gave a reassuring smile. I will be back soon. I went to a tailor shop and bought 2 sets of thick winter clothes in peach color, and also bought hot steamed buns. After the 2 children were fed and warm, I left enough silver with the clinic and arranged for them to stay there. I will come to pick you up in 3 days. The boy held my hand. Will you really come, sister? I promise. Take good care of yourself and your sister. From now on, you don't need to hide your identity as a girl anymore. The little girl's eyes immediately turned red, and she fought back tears as she nodded vigorously. Throughout the process, Julian didn't say a word. Walking out the door, he asked me, "How did you see that they were girls?" I recognized the look in their eyes. "Does your highness think I am putting on an act?" "No, you are still the same as before. Before, the first day we met, you saved me." Thinking of our reunion at the mouth of the well, I felt a bit guilty, so I smiled softly, lowered my head, and didn't answer. Leaving the clinic, I took Julian to a large courtyard complex. It was an orphanage I had spent money to build the previous year. There lived elderly people with no children to care for them and children who had lost their parents. They warmed each other, treating one another like family. When we arrived, a teacher was giving a lesson. Julian and I stood to the side, watching quietly. "Will you bring the 2 children you just saved here?" he asked. "Yes, if they are willing." "Why not bring them to Ning An House?" "They've brought to Ning An House, they can only be servants or maids. But here, they will have family and books to read. Even if they don't have the chance to enter the court, they can create a different destiny." Watching the children reciting and swaying their heads along with the teacher, I suddenly turned and asked, "Your Highness, Do you find it absurd for women of the world to read books, and an act against nature for them to take exams and enter the court? Julian turned to look at me, then looked back at the children studying. I have also thought, if one day women could also enter the court, what kind of scene would that be? I said nothing, just staring intently at Julian, until his features became clearer, exactly like right now. Standing before the emperor, he earnestly presented his request for a marriage decree. The emperor was staring intently at a design drawing for a swing, with no time to pay attention to Julian and me. After a long while, Julian petitioned again. The emperor seemed disturbed and waved his hand impatiently. As for the marriage, let it be as Julian requests. Thank you, imperial grandfather, for fulfilling this wish. As soon as the words were spoken, the emperor picked up the drawing, his eyes never leaving it, not even for a fraction. That very day, the marriage decree was issued. The wedding date was set for 3 months later, with all preparations fully delegated to the Ministry of Rights and the Imperial Household Department. 3 days later, Princess Sheila held a flower appreciation banquet and sent someone to deliver an invitation for me to attend. At the banquet, noble ladies were as numerous as clouds. Princess Sheila sat upright in the seat of honor. She was still the same as 11 years ago, her smile gentle and dignified, hiding all sharpness deep within her eyes. Seeing me arrive, she affectionately took my hand. You are the grandson's consort personally appointed by His Majesty. Don't stand on ceremony, just call me Auntie Sheila. Yes, Auntie Sheila, I responded respectfully. Seeing me so forthright, a flash of surprise flickered in Princess Sheila's eyes. She gave a faint smile and said nothing more. The hand holding mine also unconsciously let go. She was the only daughter of Duke Shen. Pampered from childhood, she had a proud and willful nature. Having been a princess consort for barely 10 years, she had become accustomed to wearing a mask in social dealings, but her temper hadn't changed a bit. Before long, Princess Sheila left the banquet to change her clothes. In the banquet hall, mocking and contemptuous laughter gradually rose. Are you even worthy? A noble lady at the lower tables suddenly stood up, glaring at me. I glanced at her, ignoring her anger, and took a sip of sweet grape wine myself. It was easy to guess that in this banquet, Princess Sheila must have secretly signaled them long ago. Truly vulgar and unbearable. As the words fell, I suddenly flew into a rage and threw the chopsticks in my hand onto the banquet table. You dare to be arrogant here. Who gave you the gall? The noble ladies were provoked by my action, while I just turned my head to look at them indifferently. The atmosphere instantly became tense, like a drawn bow. Those preparing to watch the drama quietly covered their mouths and signaled to each other. I was planning to use this excuse to leave the banquet. As soon as I looked up, I saw Julian. He stood not far away, watching me perform. Julian strode into the hall, saying angrily, "Who is bullying my consort?" The banquet instantly fell silent. Just then, Princess Sheila hurriedly returned from the rear hall. "Julian is here." Princess Sheila nodded slightly, pretending to be surprised. The leading noble lady bowed. "Your Highness misunderstood, we subjects were just joking around with Miss Nina. It's just that Miss Nina has quite a temper and flipped the banquet table in anger." I retracted my angry appearance from before and clutched Julian's sleeve tightly. "It was I who didn't understand the rules, it has nothing to do with the other ladies. I want to go back first." Julian frowned slightly. Princess Sheila only then stepped forward to mediate, her tone soothing. All right, it was just a joke between girls. Julian, you are too tense with this bride-to-be who hasn't even entered the door yet. Auntie Sheila apologizes to you here." I refused to let go, pulling Julian's sleeve even tighter with more force, putting him in a difficult position. Finally, it was Julian who reached out and brushed my hand away. "Nuff, don't make a fuss." Tears immediately welled up in my eyes. I bowed to Princess Sheila and excused myself. Looking up, I happened to catch a flash of contempt and disdain in her eyes. As soon as Julian and I returned to Ning'an House, Princess Sheila sent her close personal maid to bring rewards. I stared unblinkingly at a table full of gold and silver jewelry, my expressionless face suddenly breaking into a smile. I bowed to the maid who brought the items, and even hurriedly held her hand to ask after her welfare. "Thank you, sister. Tomorrow I will definitely visit Auntie Sheila personally to offer my thanks." A look of surprise flashed in the maid's eyes. When she bowed her head, the corner of her lips curled up in a line of certainty, then she curtsied and withdrew. Julian lazily sat in the chair drinking tea. I turned to look at him, and he just glanced at me. The next morning, wearing the gold hairpin bestowed by Princess Sheila, I went to offer thanks. When I left, the rewards were as abundant as before. On the third day, when I came again, I was informed that Princess Sheila had left the city to worship Buddha and would not return to the manor for several days. I ordered people to spread the news outside. For a time, I became a subject of ridicule during tea and wine conversations among the common folk. They laughed that I was true to my merchant background, eyes lighting up at the sight of money, sticking to her even without caring for face. Before long, the palace sent an etiquette nanny to train me in manners, and those secretly watching me gradually relaxed. The business of Ningen House was temporarily handed over to Luna. While the etiquette nanny was in the palace, I closed my doors and didn't go out, quietly waiting for the wedding day. Julian frequently came to the shop to sit. He was generous with his money, and in just over a month, he had won over everyone in Ningen House. Even Luna, who was originally a bit dissatisfied with him, began to speak up for him. The moon rises and sets, morning and evening replace each other. Half a month before the grand wedding, Mrs. Chen's entourage arrived. Meeting again, she smiled with tears in her eyes. I haven't seen you for 2 years, seeing you safe now. Eyes? Auntie's health still good? I asked, looking toward Nanny Do. With Dr. Lily here, Miss Nina can rest assured. Before the words were finished, Lily walked in holding a large chest. Nina, this whole chest is additional dowry I prepared for you. Would you really set foot in the capital again? I was surprised by Lily's appearance. You are getting married, I definitely had to come, she said, a look of loneliness flashing in her eyes. Luna smiled and took the chest from Lily's hands, inviting everyone inside. In a blink, the wedding day approached. Ningen House was draped in red silk. The character for double happiness filled the doors and windows. Because the emperor loved his eldest grandson, he broke protocol and held a banquet in the palace, inviting all officials to attend. The imperial household department delivered the grandson consort's wedding robe, embroidered with gold thread by over 100 embroiderers, luxurious to the extreme. The auspicious day arrived, and I put on the wedding dress. Mrs. Chen's eyes were brimming with tears. She took off the bracelet she was wearing and put it on my wrist. I wanted to refuse, but she stopped me. You came to me when you were small. Today, on behalf of my sister-in-law, I send you off to be married. Consider it fulfilling the friendship between her and me, and the mother-daughter bond between you and me. I did not refuse again. Turning around, I entered the wedding palanquin at the command of the wedding envoy. Mrs. Chen always stood behind, watching me every time I left. When I first arrived at the Chen manor, I was often sick, waking up startled in the middle of the night. She was always there. She kept me by her side, teaching me everything she could. She watched me take every step on the initial path of business. She tried hard to take on the role of a mother, soothing my wounds, but always kept a certain distance, never revealing the choking grief in her heart. I saw the pain she bore alone, and understood the reason for that pain. She and I were the same, we both had a pain we could never let go of. Wherever the palanquin went, bells and drums resonated, moving straight along the bustling Vermilion Bird Street toward the imperial palace. The wedding envoy read decree establishing the grandson consort before the palace of celebration. Julian held my hand as we walked up the high platform. Along the way, the sound of strings and woodwinds never ceased. The path leading to that high position does not have the words good end. I am not afraid as long as your highness leads me. I turned to look at Julian. His hand responding to me tightened a few degrees. After the grand ceremony, I was surrounded by palace servants and taken to the bridal chamber. It wasn't until night fell that Julian was helped back to the room by servants. A servant brought a tray with the nuptial wine and placed it before Julian and me. Julian and I drank the nuptial wine together. The wedding ceremony ended here. Julian raised his hand to signal for the meal to be removed. After finishing, I sat upright before the bronze mirror to let Luna remove my hairpins and jewelry. Julian leaned on the soft couch, watching me quietly. He suddenly stood up, walked slowly to my side, took hold of my hair, and gently caressed it playfully. Seeing this, the palace servants all bowed and withdrew from the hall. Only Julian and I remained in the room. Tired all day. Rest early. The gentle look in Julian's eyes gradually dissolved. He left half the space for me, took off his outer robe, and got into bed. On our wedding night, we slept fully clothed. Before throwing the embroidered ball, the two of us had frankly stated our objectives. I would do my utmost to help him ascend the throne, and he would give me everything I wanted. We were merely allies with shared interests. It was just that in this gamble, I bet that he would not break his faith. The reason for such an impression perhaps stemmed from the familiar feeling he gave me when we first met at Blossom Tower. Or perhaps because when I was young, I heard my father mention his father, a kind and respectable crown prince. Thinking of this, I turned over, closed my eyes, and fell asleep. At the ire of the pig, a servant outside reported with an urgent tone. Your Highness, Vice Minister of War Bill Wu has drowned in Tai Pond. Julian and I suddenly opened our eyes and looked at each other. Julian frowned deeply, a flash of surprise passing through his eyes. I quickly composed myself, stood up, and asked, when did it happen? Are there witnesses? Go investigate the cause clearly and report back. The servant responded in panic and hurriedly left. The Crown Prince's palace was now in chaos, with soldiers rushing back and forth, seemingly searching for something. Not long after, the servant returned to report. The Vice Minister of War left the banquet alone for quite a while tonight after drinking. His attendants couldn't find him. When discovered, his face had been eaten away by fish in Tai Pond, unrecognizable. The next day in court, because of the Vice Minister of War drowning in Tai Pond, the officials argued endlessly, and suspicion arose everywhere. The emperor ordered the Dali Temple to investigate thoroughly. Inside and outside the palace, people were anxious for a time. When examining the body, the coroner discovered something unusual about the cause of Bill Wu's death. Although there were no external injuries, a silver needle so small it was hard to detect was found in the flesh at the back of his neck. The clue pointed to a carefully orchestrated conspiracy. Julian and the minister of the Dali Temple worked day and night to solve the case, unexpectedly dragging out an old case from many years ago. The case of General Wen embezzling military provisions 11 years prior. Julian found a secret room in the residence of Vice Minister Bill Wu, which contained a ledger clearly detailing the embezzlement of military provisions back then. Bill Wu was obviously one of those involved at the time. To prevent future mishaps, he had secretly kept key evidence. Julian presented the ledger before the emperor. The emperor flew into a rage and ordered the Dali Temple to retry the old case. When the decree arrived, Mrs. Chen suddenly froze in place, then turned to look at me. She wanted to say something but suddenly coughed violently. When she looked up again, Mrs. Chen was crying uncontrollably, holding my hand tight. The day you entered the Chen Manor, I knew you definitely wanted revenge. I have no right to stop you, but child, they will absolutely not let you go. I am not afraid. I comforted Mrs. Chen while gently patting her back. The Chen and Wen families were both military families. To avoid suspicion, they rarely interacted on the surface. But in private, the grandfathers of both families were sworn friends who lived and died together. After my grandfather passed away, the two families never cut off contact. That year, Grandmaster Chen retired from the world because his disability prevented him from leading troops, leaving only his only son, Master Chen, holding the post of Minister of War in the court. Unexpectedly, the day my father was defeated at the West River, Bill Wu suddenly accused the local officials of colluding with my father to embezzle military provisions, with irrefutable evidence. He said that on the battlefield, inferior weapons were substituted for good ones, leading to the defeat. And Master Chen, who was not heavily involved in this matter, could not escape misfortune. He was convicted of dereliction of duty and exiled to Yunzhou, but he died of grief shortly after arriving there. The Chen clan, fearing implication, couldn't avoid it fast enough. For decades, it was as if they had been erased from the lineage, cutting off all contact with Jasper. As for my father, he was convicted of embezzlement, stripped of his official rank, and had his military power revoked. The entire Wen household was sentenced to exile. But before the decree could even be issued, news came that my father had died in battle. He used his life to exchange for a 15-year armistice treaty with the neighboring country. The emperor intended to let my father atone for his crimes with merit, dealing leniently with the Wen clan. But that very night, a group of bandits broke into the Wen manor, setting fires, killing, and looting. Except for me, no one in the Wen manor survived. From then on, the Wen name bore a stigma. Everyone said General Wen's embezzlement caused the defeat, and the destruction of his family was retribution sent by heaven. 11 years ago, both families suffered heavy blows, their vitality exhausted. Now that the old case was being retried, the treacherous officials who had participated in framing the Chen and Wen families were so terrified they couldn't eat or sleep. They exchanged private messages frequently, but it was all in vain. I had endured and hidden for many years, secretly collecting evidence from back then. I was determined to strike a fatal blow. The imperial family's grand joyous occasion was precisely the moment they let their guard down the most. After the Dali Temple investigated thoroughly, they found countless suspicious points in the case from years ago, implicating high-ranking nobles. In the court, officials argued fiercely, and even the common folk buzzed with discussion. After another month of large-scale investigation, all evidence pointed to Prince Rei's uncle, a heavyweight minister in the court, the Minister of Revenue. Other related officials were quickly detained pending trial. The capital was filled with anxiety. In the court, faced with evidence as solid as a mountain, the Minister of Revenue confessed on the spot. The emperor was furious, ordering the execution of the minister and his accomplices, the confiscation of their entire family assets, and the exile of their clansmen into slavery, never to be recalled. As the saying goes, pulling one hair moves the whole body. Even though Prince Rei wanted to wash his hands of the matter, and did not step forward to plead for his own uncle, he was still implicated and confined to his princely manor. The remaining people in the case were convicted of forming a faction, the ringleaders were sentenced to hanging, and the accomplices were exiled to the army. Although Vice Minister of War Bill Wu was dead, the court still stripped him of his rank according to the law. His assets were confiscated, and his crimes were announced to the world. After the involved officials were punished, the emperor issued a decree to the world, clearing the names of my parents and our clan. We walked for 11 years, and finally, we washed away their grievances. But the mastermind manipulating everything from behind, Duke Shen, still stood tall and did not fall. He was tied tightly to Prince Rei through marriage. They shared glory and loss together. I only needed to join forces with Julian to deal with Prince Rei. Once Prince Rei lost the possibility of succeeding to the throne, Duke Shen would be nothing more than a grasshopper after autumn. With everything temporarily concluded, Mrs. Chen prepared to leave. I informed her that Jasper would be able to return to the capital before long, and simultaneously arranged for them to move back into the old Chen estate. Lily also stayed in the capital, passing the exams to become a female physician in the palace. Lily's mother was the only daughter of the head of the Imperial Medical Bureau. Years ago, her grandfather chose his student as his son-in-law, never expecting that after he passed away, that ungrateful son-in-law would seize the entire Ling family fortune and ancient medical texts, and even forbid Lily from practicing medicine, forcing her into marriage. Lily returned this time precisely to take back what rightfully belonged to her. By winter, the gloom that had shrouded the capital for months gradually dispersed. The court stepped back onto its track, and officials attended court to discuss matters as usual. During the morning court session, news arrived that a plague had broken out in Yanbei. The people of the Yan lands were in panic and fear. The emperor wanted to send an imperial commissioner to Yanbei to stabilize the situation, but not a single person in the entire court spoke up. After a long silence in the grand hall, the voice of Lucy broke the stillness. "I am willing to accept the decree." Some laughed that she didn't know her own strength, daring to pick up potato. Others gloated, waiting to see her make a mistake. 3 days later, Lucy led a team along with medical officials and set off for Yanbei. After arriving in the Yan lands, in just 1 short month, she stabilized the chaotic situation. The imperial physicians she brought, along with folk doctors, also quickly researched a prescription to cure the plague. Hearing the news, the emperor was greatly pleased, praising Lucy endlessly in court. Although the plague was under control, the emperor placed special importance on future epidemic prevention and the restoration of people's livelihood. Along with rewards came the deployment of increased manpower. Seeing the year coming to an end, the capital's markets were bustling, with commoners busy buying supplies for the new year. As the new spring approached, the emperor summoned a group of local officials with outstanding political achievements to the capital to report on their work, including the prefect of Bianzhou, Jasper. The people of Bianzhou praised him endlessly, and his reputation spread throughout the realm. His achievements were particularly outstanding. He was promoted 3 years in a row. Furthermore, capitalizing on the exoneration of the Chen clan in the morning court, he was personally appointed by the emperor as an official of the Eastern Palace, holding the principal 4th rank, serving as an advisor to the crown prince. This decree made all the officials look at him with different eyes. Since the former crown prince passed away, the court had not yet established a new crown prince. In the court, One faction advocated for establishing Prince Rei as the successor, while another faction consisted of old ministers who had followed the former crown prince, continuing to support the imperial grandson, Julian, believing that to be the orthodox line. The remaining people had not yet shown their attitude. In reality, they were not neutral or incorruptible, but weighing the times, afraid to bet their family's destiny on someone without a certain chance of winning. Now that the emperor had appointed officials for the Eastern Palace early, he must have the intention to establish a crown prince. The capital would surely be stirred up again. Over the years, the princes had either died young or been demoted and expelled. The obscure and nameless ones had no power, only Prince Rei and the imperial grandson divided the power, locked in a trend of competing for superiority. After the former crown prince passed away, Prince Rei assisted in government affairs for many years and was considered the living prince with the most hope of being named crown prince. But since the old case was retried, Prince Rei sacrificed his rook to save the king, losing the support of the Ministry of Revenue, which chilled the hearts of those who had followed him for years. Yet, his power still could not be underestimated. Because of the investigation, Julian had been forced to tear off his mask of a hedonistic playboy, becoming a thorn in Prince Rei's side. After Julian returned to court, he temporarily hid his capabilities to bide his time. Although supported by the former crown prince's old ministers, revealing himself too early before the time was ripe would easily make enemies wary. However, in the eyes of Prince Rei, who had been immersed in the court for over 10 years, a husband and wife like us, with such impatient natures, were even easier to deal with. He could even repeat his old trick, just like how he harmed his elder brother, the crown prince, years ago, gently and easily. At the banquet, Prince Rei and his wife, having been released from confinement for the new year, respectfully presented New Year's gifts. When they returned to their seats, the look Princess Sheila gave me was filled with malice, completely unconcealed. Prince Rei had once instructed her to probe my character and the forces behind me, but she was careless, causing Prince Rei to lose a major support in the Ministry of Revenue, nearly damaging the marital bond between her and Prince Rei. Even so, the clan behind her still stood tall in the court. Her father was Duke Shen, although he had retired. His students in the court were numerous, and his prestige had not diminished. Prince Rei would not truly distance himself from her because of this. It was just that the gaze wanting to tear me into 1,000 pieces was overly scorching. I casually raised my wine cup from a distance and signaled toward her. "I haven't seen you for months. Have you been well, Auntie Sheila?" The corner of Princess Sheila's mouth twitched, pulling out a cold smile that was stiff to the extreme. Don't celebrate too soon. Not long after, the matter of Lucy taking the exam under her brother's name was brought before the emperor. Because of this, the court once again erupted into fierce debate. Some impeached Lucy for the crime of deceiving the sovereign, demanding she be dismissed from office. Others argued that the Yanlands were not yet peaceful. Escorting Lucy back to the capital at this time might cause the situation to backfire. There were even those who fanned the flames toward Ning An House and me, thereby impeaching Julian as well. Finally, the emperor issued a decree confining Julian and me to our manor. But he did not impose any punishment on Lucy or her clan. It wasn't until a month later, during the emperor's birthday festival, that we were released. The birthday banquet was halfway through. I looked into the banquet hall, where that pair of eyes had been watching me for a long time. I thought he would be my best ally. I didn't expect him to push me away in the name of protection. That conversation between him and Mrs. Chen that night made me suddenly realize, if I stood side by side with him, perhaps I would have to wait another 10 years, or even 20 years. Waiting until he became a powerful minister in the court. Only then could I get slightly closer to the center of power. Only then could I clear the names of our relatives. Therefore, I followed his thinking and left the Chen manor, leaving the place he had given his all to shield, without knowing if it was a blessing or a curse for myself. All these years, the letters I sent back only said I was safe, until that day when I rushed to Bianzhou to meet Jasper, asking him to return to the capital to assist me. He fell silent for a moment but ultimately nodded. "What are you looking at?" "Madam, you're distracted." Beside me Julian peeled crab meat and placed it in my bowl. "Thank you, Your Highness." I smiled in thanks. Since marrying me, Julian had become much steadier, and quite a few anecdotes about our loving relationship circulated. Seeing this, Jasper's gaze was complex. He raised his cup for a sip, which finally turned into a bitter smile. The banquet was about to end, and Julian kept drinking wine continuously. I reminded him once, then stood up to leave the banquet. Walking to the side of Tay Pond, a person approached from the opposite direction, looking as if he wanted to speak but stopped. Nina. I halted and turned around. Lord Chen. His gaze fell on the pear blossom hairpin in my hair. You still keep this hairpin? I was just about to reply when Julian's appearance interrupted. Madam made me search everywhere. We should go home now. Julian took my hand and pulled me away. Farewell. I had to hurriedly bid goodbye to Jasper. Returning to the manor, Julian went into the study alone. When the servants helped him back to the room, he was drunk to the point of unconsciousness. I ordered someone to cook sobriety soup, but Julian acted like a child, hugging my arm tightly and refusing to let go. I helped him sit up on the bed, his head leaned on my shoulder, his hot breath blowing against my neck. Your Highness, drink the sobriety soup quickly. Sleeping while drunk will harm your health. Did you used to care for him like this too? Julian suddenly looked up, his eyes hazy. What? Julian didn't answer me. He took the bowl of sobriety soup, drank it in one gulp, and then fell into my arms in a daze. Helpless, I could only arrange for him to sleep first. When I woke up the next morning, no one was beside me. I got up to wash and groom, only to hear Luna call softly, Miss. Following her voice, I saw the pear blossom hairpin broken into several pieces, placed on the vanity table. I immediately went on alert because that was not the pear blossom hairpin I usually wore. When was it swapped? By whom? All sorts of speculations appeared in my mind. During the time Julian and I were confined, quite a few spies were planted in the manor. If this got out, I feared it would cause trouble. Just as I was distressed, Julian suddenly appeared at the door. Are you awake, Your Highness? I stood up and curtsied. Julian strode over and supported me. No need for that. Seeing this, Luna bowed her head and withdrew. Julian took a gold hairpin from his inner robe. I carelessly dropped and broke your hairpin this morning. Consider this compensation. I understood clearly in my heart and quickly calmed my emotions, accepting the gold hairpin. You spent too much, Your Highness. Seeing you frown, is that jade hairpin very important to you? Julian suddenly asked. It was a gift from an old friend. My mind was entirely on the replaced pear blossom hairpin, and for a moment, I didn't understand why Julian acted this way. I looked at him, wanting to probe something from his expression, but he revealed no emotion, sitting for a moment before getting up to leave. I think perhaps he just wanted to destroy evidence unfavorable to me. Organizing my thoughts, I went out to Ningen House as usual. By the Lantern Festival, Julian had originally promised to go to the Lantern Fair with me, but was kept in the palace to discuss state affairs. Luna and I went out first. The streets were packed with people. While Luna was buying candied hawthorn, I was kidnapped in the middle of the road by villains. The gag in my mouth was soaked with knockout drug. When I woke up, I had been tied up and thrown into a gloomy secret room. I closed my eyes to listen to the movement around me. A familiar female voice reached my ears. You didn't leave any clues, did you? Reporting to the princess, the secret guards around her have all been eliminated. This is the Duke's private residence. No one dares to barge in. Princess Sheila gave a faint CM. I pretended not to be awake yet. Pressing a switch on my ring, a tiny, extremely sharp blade instantly popped out. While they were talking, I cut the rope binding my wrists. With just a little more force, I could break free. Princess Sheila looked down at me from above, her eyes filled with the pleasure of imminent revenge. Wake, are you? Pity you, born of a merchant family, yet you exhausted your mind and effort to fight for him. The prince and I have noble families backing us. Did you think that just by opening a Ningen house and winning over a few paupers, you could oppose us? Why did the princess have to come personally? I sat up and looked straight into her eyes. The things I want, the people I want to kill. I have always done it with my own hands. Princess Sheila sneered. Then guess what the grandson is doing right now. What if he turns the whole city upside down looking for you? At most, he will just be collecting your corpse. As soon as Julian received the news, he mobilized the Imperial Guards to search the entire city for me. It's just that he will follow the countermeasure we discussed beforehand, finding his way step by step to Prince Ray's Imperial farm in the western suburbs, and under the gaze of many, he will discover the underground tunnel hiding a large amount of armor and kerosene oil. I gave a self-mocking laugh. I am nothing more than a pawn for the Imperial grandson. His real goal is actually Prince Ray. You think Prince Ray will lose anything this time? I raised my eyes, my words carrying deep meaning. Princess Sheila stood up from the host's seat, shouting angrily, Tell me where Julian's twinfish jade pendant is, and I might spare your life." Princess Sheila leaned in close to my face, lowering her head to whisper, "Otherwise, your parents' end will be your end." I staggered sideways, revealing the twinfish pendant hanging on my neck. Princess Sheila immediately reached out to grab it. I suddenly broke free from the restraints and pulled her towards me. The sharp blade was against Princess Sheila's throat as fast as lightning. The people beside her immediately surrounded me. Their martial arts skills were all higher than mine. If we fought, I would absolutely have no chance of winning. "Nina, when?" Princess Sheila was both angry and anxious. I laughed softly, whispering close to her ear, "Prince Ray is in trouble." Princess Sheila hesitated for a moment, then hurriedly ordered her subordinates, "Don't worry about me. Go to Duke Shen's manor and tell my father to save the prince." Before the words were finished, the blade had pierced her throat. Her eyes went wide in disbelief, clutching her neck, she fell forward. The event happened too suddenly, her subordinates were all stunned. By the time they snapped out of it, they looked ready to tear me into 100 pieces. I backed away to create distance, immediately waving my hand to scatter the poison powder from my purse, then quickly covered my nose and mouth, slipping behind a pillar into the darkness. In the secret room, miserable screams suddenly rang out. I don't know how long passed, but the surroundings had long since fallen into a dead silence. Grandmaster Chen's question when he first taught me echoed in my ears. "Nina, why are you determined to choose the path of poison and hidden weapons? To defeat the strong with the weak, one must grasp the timing perfectly. Break the enemy with one strike, one hit to kill." Since the age of 11, the martial arts I learned were only for self-defense. No matter how gifted I was by nature, I could not rely on brute force to kill enemies who were generals. What I truly devoted myself to studying was the art of poison and the path of hidden weapons. I never forgot how unjustly and miserably my clan died, how the elderly servants risked their lives to escort me to escape. That night, the fire in the Wen Manor reached the sky, yet I was helpless to do anything. I blended into the crowd of beggars, seeing with my own eyes the bandits wearing armor that night following behind Duke Shen. At that time, Princess Sheila, not yet married, was also there. She said nonchalantly to Duke Shen, "The Wen clan knew their sins were heavy, fearing punishment. They burned themselves to death." Duke Shen pretended to sigh, deciding the nature of the event, then presented a memorial to the court stating, "My mother took me to commit suicide for love." The Wen Manor was raided, the 3 branches of the Wen clan were exiled as slaves, and my relatives all died on the road before reaching the place of exile. I couldn't save them from the fire and water, nor could I save the Nina who was once innocent and ignorant of the world back then. Before my consciousness blurred, I heard someone calling my name. It made me remember back then when I fainted on the road. "You saved me then." I dreamed of my family again. My father, General Wen, came from a family of military officials. He was once a study companion to the former crown prince. Later, he left the palace to mourn his father's passing. Once the mourning period ended, the border was chaotic and unstable, so he resolutely went to the battlefield. After repelling enemy harassment at the border many times, he garrisoned troops to guard the harsh Bianzhou for over 10 years. My mother came from a poor family in Bianzhou. My maternal grandfather was the only teacher in the village. Although their daughter married high to a great general, the whole family still lived simply and peacefully, without any airs of arrogance. When I was small, I often followed my cousins from my mother's side up the mountain to play. My eldest cousin, Annie Go, loved martial arts and secretly ran into the military camp to learn from my father. Every time we went out, she protected us younger sisters, often hunting wild rabbits for us to eat. She wanted to join the army to protect the people of Bianzhou from foreign harassment. My second cousin, Anna Guo, always held a dream in her heart. Her greatest wish was to go to the capital, to see with her own eyes the prosperous age where people lived in peace. She planned that after returning from her travels, she would marry her childhood sweetheart who always followed her around, and live peacefully by her parents' side. My third cousin, Silver Go, begged our grandfather to change her name at age 5 just because she loved silver. She always thought about following merchant caravans to travel the 4 corners of the world. Later, she really did follow a caravan to do business and earned 100 taels of silver, happily preparing thoughtful gifts for everyone in the family. Cousin Annie received a red tassel spear of considerable value. Anna received a set of magnificent clothes, and I received a pony. I was rejoicing when I discovered the pony was also carrying a bag on its back. Silver signaled for me to open it. Inside was a small, exquisite bow and arrow set. Little Nina, these are all your favorites, right? Silver's eyes curved in a smile. I jumped up in excitement, hugging her face and giving her a big kiss. But very quickly, I became sad again. Although my father was a general, my mother had forbidden me from touching anything related to martial arts since I was young, so I was extremely distressed. Silver immediately comforted me. Don't worry, we'll help you hide it at Auntie's place. Just say it belongs to Big Sister. I thought about it and felt it would work. Everyone turned their eyes to Silver to see what gift she prepared for herself. Unexpectedly, she pulled a gold ingot from behind her back. I, Silver, go. From now on, love silver no more. My favorite thing is gold. Anna teased. Then won't you change your name to Goldie Goo, ha ha ha. Silver stomped her foot and shouted petulantly, Anna Goo. That day, Silver chased Anna all over the courtyard. Eldest cousin Annie finished performing with her long spear and raised her clear voice. Then I will protect these peaceful days for you sisters. Anna suddenly stopped and sighed. But in our dynasty, there has never been a precedent for women to be officials or generals. Silence fell for a moment, then Annie spoke loudly. There will definitely be such a day, as long as we are willing to fight for it. I drew the bow and aimed at the target in the courtyard. With a whoosh, the arrow hit right in the bullseye. Everyone gathered around in surprise. Little Nina, did Uncle secretly teach you archery behind Auntie's back? Maybe I often peeked at Father practicing. Or maybe I practiced a lot in my dreams. My heart beat fast, filled with excitement. Then you are too amazing, hitting the bullseye on your first try. The sisters gathered around. Eldest cousin nodded, her eyes full of praise. But in just an instant the world turned upside down, a sea of fire filled the sky, and the scene of my family's disaster appeared. When they vanished before my eyes, they still looked as they did in their youth. Mother pushed me out of the sea of fire, looking at me gently one last time. The relatives who once loved me suffered enough misery and died on the road to exile. Those warm images of the past followed that scorching fire, becoming a nightmare I repeated countless times throughout the years that followed. I suddenly jolted awake from the nightmare. Before my eyes was pitch blackness. Luna was guarding my bedside. Wait until I feel a bit better. She lowered her voice to report, Miss, the imperial grandson did not go to Prince Ray's imperial farm as agreed, but went straight to investigate Duke Shen. During the 3 days I was in a coma, another storm of blood and terror rose in the capital. Princess Sheila was dead, died in the fire at Duke Shen's private residence. On that same day, an underground tunnel hiding a large amount of armor and kerosene oil was found next to the manor belonging to Duke Shen. After the matter was exposed, Duke Shen, with eyes full of tears, knelt and cried, collapsing in the middle of the court. He confessed to the crime of privately hoarding armor and kerosene. The emperor, in a rage, stripped him of all titles and honors Duke Shen had accumulated since the time of the founding ancestor, and threw him into prison to await execution. Prince Ray was reprimanded even more harshly right in the court, suspected of plotting a rebellion to force the emperor's abdication. Prince Ray, who had been favored for decades, now fallen from grace in a single morning, cried miserably in the grand hall. Father Emperor, your son knew nothing. I beg Father Emperor, for the sake of the Empress, to show mercy to your son. Prince Ray's birth mother died early. He was raised by the late Empress since childhood and grew up with the former crown prince like biological brothers. Who expected the Emperor to say such a sentence? The Empress. I fear she regrets adopting you the most. Prince Ray collapsed onto the floor, unable to believe his imperial father. Could it be that he already knew the Empress, and the crown prince brother died at his hands? But he did not regret it. Whose path to becoming emperor hasn't buried white bones? Prince Ray was escorted out of the imperial palace, imprisoned for life in the Prince Ray manor. Hearing this, I opened my mouth to instruct Luna. The spies in the manor can now be completely uprooted. Luna accepted the order and withdrew. I fumbled to get out of bed, wanting to find the chest Lily left for me, but I couldn't distinguish which medicine inside could cure my eyes. The door was suddenly pushed open. Julian hurriedly walked over to help me up, only to see my eyes were lifeless. In the darkness I couldn't sense his expression. The air was silent for a while. Julian's voice trembled slightly. Can it still be cured? Of course it can. I looked up and smiled. Immediately after, Julian suddenly hugged me tightly in his arms. I'm sorry, it was I who failed to protect you. It has nothing to do with you. Julian helped me lie back on the bed, asking carefully, do you feel unwell anywhere else? No. "Your Highness, go rest. Having Luna take care of me is enough." "No matter, I'll stay with you." True feelings or false pretenses? I couldn't distinguish them. The refusal at my lips couldn't be spoken, so I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep, but the hand holding mine didn't let go. I pulled my hand back, retreating inward to make room. My movement startled him awake. "Sleep up here." Hearing this, Julian nodded and responded, "All right." He took off his outer robe and lay down beside me. "Why didn't your Highness directly overthrow Prince Ray?" "Whoever dies first makes no difference. But Prince Ray and Duke Shen are inherently one entity. If Prince Ray loses the ability to inherit the throne, Duke Shen becomes nothing to fear. Now that your Highness investigated Duke Shen directly, although he was punished, Prince Ray still remains. For your Highness, this is not necessarily the most advantageous situation." Julian helped me tuck the blanket. We almost spoke at the same time. "The matter with Princess Sheila was my lack of thorough consideration. I caused trouble for you." He turned over, looking like he wanted to speak but stopped. "Actually, you can try trusting me, relying on me." "I believe you," I replied, turning over to face him. The air froze, neither spoke for a long time. "Don't think too much. I know. In the future, if anything happens, I will tell you in advance." Pausing, I added, "I won't let you worry." Julian's voice softened. "Good." The next morning, Julian was nowhere to be seen. After getting up whenever I moved, Luna had to support me, afraid I would bump into something. I patted her hand and smiled. If I truly cannot see in the future, can I not learn to walk on my own? Luna slowly let go. "Let me grope away." Before breakfast, Julian brought over a bowl of pitch black medicine. The servant following Julian spoke up. The imperial grandson went to decoct the medicine before dawn. He even burned his hand. Luna hurriedly took the tray. I looked toward him. "Your Highness, actually, you don't need to do these things." Julian said nothing, sitting down in front of me. "This is what a husband should do." He took the bowl from the tray and fed me spoonful by spoonful. From that day on, Julian hardly left my side. Although I was a bit unaccustomed to it, thinking of him being by my side made my heart feel at peace. Recently, Lily had formulated an antidote. I took it for 6 or 7 days. Waking up early in the morning, I discovered my eyes could see. Although it was blurry and unclear, I could finally distinguish the person in front of me. Julian slept very peacefully beside me. I tilted my head to observe his features. Unintentionally turning to lie on my side, my eyes met Julian's. I was a bit flustered and looked away. Julian woke up completely. "Not yet." As the words left my mouth, I was surprised at myself for blurting out a lie. Julian's eyebrows seemed to show a bit of disappointment, but he comforted me. Wait until your eyes are healed. I have something to return to you." "What is it?" Julian didn't answer, just looking at me quietly. Being looked at by him like that, heat immediately rose to my face. I turned away, saying I wanted to get out of bed. He reached out to support me. I hesitated for a moment, then placed my hand on his. The Emperor suddenly fell critically ill. Julian was summoned into the palace and didn't return for several days. Before leaving, he left Wu Wei, his most trusted personal guard, to protect me. Idle with nothing to do, I suddenly remembered the attendant's reminder from last time, so I turned to look at the chest placed high on top of the cabinet. Stored away as if locked in a high and distant place, the attendant had said, "Inside is the thing the imperial grandson treasures most. It seems to be a girl's item." I stared at that chest for a whole day, finally extinguishing the thought of peeking. Early the next morning, I finally couldn't hold back and asked Wu Wei, "What is in that chest? Do you know?" Wu Wei's face was expressionless. He looked in the direction I pointed and shook his head. Just as I was about to give up my curiosity, he unexpectedly brought the thing down and placed it right in front of me. "You can look." After speaking, Wu Wei said no more and turned to withdraw. I opened the chest. Inside were a bow and arrow, the very same bow I had given away when I was small. That night, Julian still hadn't returned. I went to sleep early but dreamed of the summer when I was 8. I rode my pony, carrying the bow and arrow up the mountain. As it was getting dark, I had hunted 2 pheasants in my bag. I put away the bow, intending to go down the mountain to my grandmother's house, to roast them with my sisters in the courtyard. Roast chicken sizzling with oil, sprinkled with pepper and chili powder, 1 bite full of savory fat, accompanied by sweet wine brewed by grandmother. Just thinking about it made me drool. But on the way down the mountain, a weak cry for help suddenly drifted over. I followed the sound and found an injured youth, unconscious. By the time I struggled to pull him from the slope onto the path, the sky was completely dark. I wanted to go down and call for help, but I feared that if I left, the scent of blood on him would attract wild beasts. I shook him awake. Can you still stand? The youth frowned with every movement, having to hold onto a tree trunk to stagger up. I helped him onto the back of my pony, preparing to take him down the mountain. Unexpectedly, he refused no matter what, saying he had to stay here and wait for someone to find him. But it's dark, I have to go home. I beg you, miss, help me. Saying this, he fainted again. I had to take him to a hidden cave. Only my sisters and I knew this place. I found dry wood and fire starters hidden there. Lighting a fire, my stomach rumbled while that person was still unconscious. Are you hungry? I'll roast a chicken for you. He said nothing. I approached to check his breathing. Still alive. I didn't when he had woken up. He said not a word. Just quietly looking at the fire, I turned to hand him a chicken leg, only to be startled by his wide, open stare. If you're hungry, eat a little, just to line your stomach. I'm telling you beforehand, I'm only staying with you tonight. As soon as it's light tomorrow, I have to go down the mountain. Thank you. The youth snapped out of it and took the chicken leg, eating silently. Maybe I roasted it too deliciously, because he actually started crying. I didn't know how to comfort him. How about I give this one to you too? Don't cry. I offered the big chicken leg I was about to put in my mouth to the youth. His face was smeared with mud, but those tear-filled eyes made his pupils look particularly beautiful. He looked down at the chicken leg in his hand. My father. He also used to roast chicken for me. But he was murdered. I don't have a father anymore. Tears fell from his eyes, hitting the back of his hand. I felt his extreme pain. In my heart, there was no longer any annoyance at being implicated. I walked over and hugged him, gently patting his shoulder to comfort him. That night, I sat by the fire and roasted the remaining chicken. When dawn was breaking, I left him the bow for self-defense and a dagger. It turned out he had recognized me very early on. Recently, discussions about establishing the crown prince were constantly heard in the court. People from the Ministry of Rights had also begun preparing items related to the investiture. Everyone assumed Julian was the irreplaceable choice. During the emperor's critical illness, Julian stayed in the palace to temporarily handle state affairs. Not long after, news came from the palace that the emperor's condition had improved, along with a decree establishing Julian as crown prince. Everyone in the manor was overjoyed, only I felt a vague unease. Things seemed to be going too smoothly. Early in the morning, Consort D secretly summoned me to the palace. When I arrived, Consort D waved her hand for me to sit beside her. The news of Julian being named crown prince has now spread throughout the capital. I nodded slightly, silently pondering this decree that came too suddenly. Consort D spoke slowly. I called you here today just to remind you of a few things. Don't be too nervous. I stood up respectfully to curtsy. I sat quietly beside Consort D, my gaze passing through the exquisitely carved lattice window. I vaguely felt this seemingly peaceful imperial palace was more like the silence before a great storm. Although I knew Consort D was Julian's person, having sat in Dai Palace for a long time, I still didn't see Julian send any message. In the afternoon, Dai Palace was quiet without a sound. Just by closing my eyes lightly, I seemed to be able to hear the clash of weapons and the sounds of killing. Immediately after, a servant came to report. Prince Ray has rebelled. The rebel army has surrounded the imperial palace. Consort D didn't look up, saying calmly, I know. She sat firmly, revealing no expression. Consort D looked up at me. Are you not afraid? Is your ladyship afraid? Consort D smiled and said no more. Until the sky turned dark, a rush of footsteps broke the silence in the hall. Prince Ray has lost. I breathed a sigh of relief in my heart, maintaining a composed look on my face. How did he lose? Consort D asked. The crown prince had set an ambush long ago, intentionally letting Prince Ray fight his way straight to the imperial city. When he reached the palace road leading to the Hall of Supreme Harmony, the trap was sprung. The rebel army was caught off guard and killed. Seeing the situation was lost, Prince Ray committed suicide on the spot. Good. Consort D stopped smiling, stood up, and walked into the inner hall, turning to look at me. Follow this palace. I followed her into the inner hall, only to discover the person lying on the bed was the emperor, who had long stopped breathing. Finally, I can leave this man eating imperial palace. Consort D laughed softly. Looking at the scene before me, I seemed to understand something. Where is he? My voice carried panic. Consort D stopped laughing, turned to appraise me, and then told me the whole story. It wasn't in vain that he plotted and schemed for you. Go find him. I flew out of the rear hall, not knowing which direction to go to find Julian. It turned out the emperor never wanted to choose either him or Prince Ray as crown prince. He only wanted the two tigers to fight, one dead and one wounded, so he could conveniently establish the prince born of the woman he loved. Prince Ki, who was far away at the horizon, as crown prince. He watched coldly as his sons went to their deaths one by one. The former crown prince years ago died precisely because of the rumor released by him, "Whoever possesses the twin fish pendant gains the world." And the eldest grandson later escaped his control. He had even less intention of letting him survive, even if only for a moment. Prince Ray died forcing the palace, Julian died of a sudden acute illness, so it was all within the emperor's calculations. Julian had planned his retreat early on. If he won, he would let me come pick him up. If he lost, someone would take me, Luna, and the others away safely. The palace was filled with mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Fear occupied my chest. I wanted to call his name, but my throat felt strangled, not allowing even a tremor to escape. The road beneath my feet seemed to have no end. Just as I was nearly despairing, a voice familiar to the point of being engraved in my bones came from behind. "Nina." I stopped abruptly and turned around, seeing only Julian covered in blood. I didn't have time to think, rushing over to support him. "How are you?" The worry for him was no longer suppressed. "I'm fine, don't be afraid." He held my hand tight, his eyes carrying a smile. I helped him back to the hall to rest. Before sleeping, he still refused to let go, asking, "Are you still willing to stay with me? If you don't want to, I can let you leave." I helped Julian adjust the blanket. "Wait until you wake up, I will tell you." The year I was 23, I became the Empress of Great Yong, beneath one person and above 10,000. Looking back at more than 10 years of living only for revenge, it seemed destiny itself pushed me to this position. No matter how painful the past was, no matter if hatred was the pillar that allowed me to barely survive, today I have gradually learned to accept the truths that cannot be changed. At 24, I was pregnant. 10 months later, I gave birth to a daughter, naming her Primrose. Primrose, symbolizing the beginning of primordial energy, representing the starting point of all things, hope and vitality. At 26, Julian restored a system abolished by the previous dynasty, the two saints ruling the court. Because of this, the court erupted in another round of arguments. "Your Majesty, please reconsider. A woman participating in politics will shake the foundation of the state." "Your Majesty." I stepped out from behind the screen and sat on the dragon throne. In the previous dynasty, the female emperor's rule not only did not shake the foundation of the state, but on the contrary, opened up a prosperous age. If the foundation of the state shakes just because a woman stands up, then that foundation, built on the backs of women, cannot stand firm for 100 years in the face of wind and waves. Looking at all the dynasties, they go from prosperity to decline, yet those in power were all men. If it were as you say, they would have lasted for thousands of generations. It can be seen that the rise and fall of a nation has nothing to do with whether a man or a woman holds power. Julian continued, "The Empress speaks very truly." For a moment, no one in the hall rebutted. Finally, I officially attended court. Looking at Lucy, who had just been transferred back to the capital, the two of us looked at each other and smiled, ignoring the conservative old officials blowing their beards and staring in anger. Lucy was originally a female official secretly designated by the late emperor. At the end of the first year I held court, I promulgated a decree allowing women to participate in the civil service exams. Unsurprisingly, this decision met with opposition from the vast majority of court officials. Even Jasper, who had always supported me, remained silent. I did not give up because of this. With Lucy, an outstanding example who repeatedly established merit in the court, the fight for equal opportunities for women was finally pried open by a crack in the second year. Women were allowed to take the exams, but the admission rate was only half that of men. This was already the result of Julian and me arguing to the end. With this, I was extremely satisfied. The first exam with both men and women participating included children who had grown up in the orphanage. Over the years, orphanages were built one after another in the capital and various prefectures. Everything was developing in a good direction. Naturally, Julian's full support was indispensable behind the scenes. For this emperor, in the following dozen years, the court was never quiet. But it wasn't because male and female officials argued without a winner. Rather, it was because they were stimulated to constantly come up with better policies. Figures of female generals gradually appeared on the battlefield. The world gradually understood that protecting the country is not something only men can do, women can too. Even so, there was still a segment of people who thought women shouldn't step into the officialdom, chattering all day in court. Whenever that happened, Julian and I would remain silent, because as soon as General Lucy glanced over, everyone would obediently shut up. Lily had also taken back what belonged to the Ling clan and now sat in the position of head of the Imperial Medical Bureau. Both inside and outside the palace, people frequently invited her to treat illnesses. The world also gradually accepted the existence of female doctors. At midnight, Julian and I couldn't sleep, casually bringing up old stories. I asked, "Do you remember the first time we met? You robbed me of my twin fish jade pendant." "What?" I touched the half of the twin fish pendant on my chest, eyes wide in disbelief. "I was only 3 then, following my family to the border to visit General Wen. You had just been born not long before. I went to see you and took it out to tease you. Who knew you would grab half of it tightly and refuse to let go? I had to leave it with you. Furthermore, the meeting at your house. Actually, I pretended to faint in your courtyard, forcing you to save me whether you wanted to or not." Seeing Julian so honest, I decided to tell him something too. "Actually, the time you were shot with an arrow and had to hide down the well. I sent people to pretend to be assassins. Hurting you in there." Julian froze for a moment, then laughed out of anger, jumping off the bed. I said, "How could there be 2 groups of people chasing to kill me back then?" I hurriedly changed the subject to put him on the back foot. Where is my hairpin with the hidden weapon? You made me think a spy found it. Did you secretly hide it or throw it away? Wasn't I afraid you would be exposed?" Julian put his hands on his hips, reasoning righteously. Then he suddenly reacted. "Hey, that's not right. Why do you still remember that hairpin? Is it because he gave it to you?" "I'm sleepy. I'm going to sleep first." Knowing he lost the argument, he pulled the blanket over his head to sleep immediately. No sleeping. You can't sleep without explaining clearly. Julian, at this age, was still pushing me and acting spoiled. Seeing I didn't move at all, he got even more anxious. "Fine, if you won't let me sleep, don't you sleep either." I started snoring softly. The surroundings were quiet for a moment. Julian suddenly crawled into my blanket. Primrose said she still wants a little sister. Nina's journey stands as a powerful testament to resilience and the transformative power of equality. It teaches us that true strength is found not in brute force, but in the quiet endurance of the spirit and the intelligence to craft one's own justice. Her rise from a helpless orphan to a co-ruling empress proves that one's background does not dictate their destiny. Furthermore, her alliance with Julian illustrates that enduring love is built on mutual respect and shared ambition. Ultimately, the story reveals that empowering women does not shake a nation's foundation, but rather fortifies it for a prosperous future. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share Raccoon Tale to help more stories come to life. See you in the next tale.